They say money can buy anything. But what happens when it can't buy a child's smile? In the heart of Lagos lived billionaire Charles Benton, a man who had everything except happiness. After a tragic accident took his wife and left his only daughter, Ella, paralyzed in one arm, silence became the loudest sound in his home. But one stormy evening, a barefoot homeless boy named Toby wandered through the rain, and what he did next would change everything. Everyone in Lagos City knew the name Charles Benton. To the world, he was the man who could turn anything to gold, a billionaire with empires in oil, shipping, and real estate. His cars gleamed like mirrors, his mansion stretched across acres, and his name opened doors that others only dreamed of knocking on. But if you had stepped through those tall iron gates and walked past the fountains that never stopped running, you would have heard something money could never buy: silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that feels heavy like the air itself is grieving. Inside those walls lived a man who had everything except laughter. His wife, Clara, had been the joy of his world, a gentle, radiant woman who filled every room with warmth. Their daughter, Ella, had inherited her mother's spirit, curious, bright-eyed, full of giggles that could soften even the hardest heart. Together, they had been a picture of love, the kind that makes neighbors believe in fairy tales. Then came that night. Rain had fallen hard against the highway as the Bentons drove home from a family dinner. No one remembers who screamed first. All Charles remembers is the sound of metal twisting, glass shattering, and Clara whispering his name before everything went dark. When he opened his eyes, his wife was gone. Hello, his daughter was changed forever. Ella survived, but her left arm was paralyzed, her legs weakened, and her laughter disappeared. She stopped playing piano. She stopped painting. She stopped smiling. The doctor said her nerves might never recover. Charles heard the words but refused to believe them. He spent his wealth chasing miracles: Germany, India, America, every hospital that promised hope. Each time, the verdict was the same: there's nothing more we can do. And so, the mansion that once echoed with songs and chatter became a shrine of stillness. Every morning, Charles left for work in a suit pressed sharper than his grief. Every evening, he returned to the same site. Ella by the window, her wheelchair facing the garden, her face blank as the sky dimmed. She rarely spoke. Sometimes he would bring her gifts, new dresses, dolls, even a puppy once, but she would only smile faintly, stroke the puppy's head, and drift back into silence. The staff learned to move quietly. Even laughter in the servants' quarters felt like a sin. The gardener trimmed the flowers without humming. The chef cooked without music. The security guards walked softer at night. Everyone felt the weight of the house, a place where joy had died. Charles tried to pray, but even his faith had grown cold. He'd look at his daughter and wonder why life could be so cruel. He would trade every car, every building, every naira he owned just to hear that little laugh again, the one that used to dance through the halls. Then came the evening that changed everything. It was a humid, gray afternoon. Clouds hung low over the city, heavy with rain. Charles had left for a meeting downtown. The mansion was quiet as always. Ella sat near the window, tracing raindrops on the glass with her good hand. Outside the gates, a barefoot boy named Toby trudged along the street. His shirt was torn, his stomach empty pebble, his eyes still held a spark, that stubborn kind of hope that poverty couldn't steal. He had been wandering all day, begging for food and shelter, turned away at every door. Now, drenched and shivering, he sought cover under the mansion's tall fence. Through the iron bars, he saw her, the girl in the wheelchair, motionless, staring into nothing. For a moment, he forgot his hunger. He saw sadness deeper than his own. It pulled at him like a whisper. Toby tilted his head, squinting through the rain. She looked trapped, not by walls, but by sorrow. And something inside him couldn't bear it. He noticed a small side gate left slightly open. Perhaps the gardener had forgotten to latch it after watering the flowers. Toby hesitated. His heart raced. He knew he could get caught. But some part of him, the part that still believed in goodness, pushed him forward. He slipped inside. The garden was huge and silent. Flowers glistened under the drizzle, fountains rippled quietly, and the air smelled of wet earth. Toby stood there, unsure what to do next. Then he remembered his mother's words she'd whispered before sickness took her away. When life turns dark, son, don't cry. Dance. Dance until the world remembers to smile. And so he did. There, in the middle of the billionaire's garden, a homeless boy began to dance. Not the trained, graceful kind, but wild, clumsy moves full of heart. He spun. He hopped. He slipped in the mud, laughed, and kept moving. His feet slapped against puddles, his arms flung open to the rain. Inside, Ella blinked. At first, she thought she was dreaming. Through the misty glass, she saw a boy, soaked to the bone, twirling in the rain with no rhythm, no music, no reason. He looked ridiculous, and yet something about him felt free. Her lips trembled. Then, without warning, a small sound escaped her, a giggle. Just one. It startled even her. She hadn't heard that sound in years. Toby looked up, saw her watching, and grinned. Encouraged, he danced harder, stomping, spinning, pretending to be a famous performer. Each move was sillier than the last, and each one drew another giggle from Ella. Soon she was laughing, softly at first, then louder, her whole body shaking with joy. The sound echoed through the hallway, startling the maid carrying a tray. She dropped a spoon and gasped. "She's laughing," the woman whispered. "Miss Ella is laughing." By the time Charles's car rolled through the gates, the news had already spread among the staff like wildfire. The mansion that hadn't known laughter in 2 years now vibrated with it. Charles stepped out, confused. He heard music playing, faint, rhythmic splashes mixed with laughter. He followed the sound to the garden. And there he froze. Rain was falling. His daughter was smiling, and in front of her, a ragged boy danced as though the world depended on it. For a long moment, Charles couldn't move. Anger and awe collided in his chest. "Who is that?" he demanded. The guards hesitated. "We don't know, sir." He's making her laugh. Charles started forward, ready to shout, to throw the boy out, but then he saw Ella's face. Her eyes were glowing, alive. She clapped her good hand weakly, urging the boy on. She looked happier than he had seen her since the accident. Charles stopped. His voice softened. "Let him be." The rain poured harder, drenching them all, but no one cared. The billionaire who owned half the city stood in the mud watching a homeless boy dance for his daughter, and for the first time in years, he smiled. That night, when Toby slipped back out through the side gate, the mansion no longer felt haunted. Light glowed softly through the windows, and laughter still echoed faintly in the halls. Charles stood by Ella's door, listening to her hum a tune before bed. A tear slid down his cheek. He didn't understand it yet, but something extraordinary had begun, something no amount of money could have bought. And somewhere out in the dark streets, under the dripping rooftops of Lagos, a barefoot boy smiled to himself, whispering. She laughed. He had no idea that this simple act, one dance in the rain, would soon change all their lives forever. The morning after the laughter returned to the Benton mansion, the house felt different. The air no longer carried the weight of grief. Even the sunlight that filtered through the tall windows seemed brighter, warmer, as though the heavens themselves had noticed what had happened. Ella woke up early. For the first time in years, she asked the maid to open the curtains wide. She wanted to see the garden again, the same garden where a boy had danced in the rain and pulled laughter out of her like a forgotten song. Her mind replayed the moment over and over. His silly spins, his soaked clothes, the way he slipped and kept dancing anyway. Every time she remembered, she smiled. Charles noticed the change immediately. Over breakfast, he watched his daughter humming softly to herself. "You're happy today," he said, his voice cautious, almost afraid the magic might vanish if he spoke too loudly. "I saw someone yesterday," Ella whispered. "He was dancing." Charles said nothing. He only nodded and smiled faintly, unsure what to make of it. Deep inside, however, he felt something stirring, hope. A fragile, trembling hope. Later that afternoon, as the gardener trimmed the hedges, he heard a familiar sound, the soft patter of bare feet and the faint hum of a tune. When he turned, his eyes widened. There was Toby, standing nervously by the gate again. His clothes were dry now, but still ragged, his hair messy, his eyes bright. The guards moved toward him, but Charles's voice came from the balcony above. "Let him in." Toby froze, unsure whether it was a trick or a miracle. The gate swung open, and the boy stepped inside slowly, clutching his shirt like it might blow away in the wind. Charles descended the marble stairs, his face unreadable. For a moment, Toby thought he would be scolded or sent away, but instead, the billionaire simply said, "My daughter has been waiting." From that day on, a quiet rhythm began, a miracle disguised as a routine. Every afternoon at 4 o'clock, Toby would come to the mansion. He would eat first, a warm plate of rice, chicken, and sometimes fruit juice. He always bowed slightly before and after each meal, whispering a simple thank you. The maids loved him for it. His gratitude was pure, untouched by pride or greed. After eating, he would go to the garden where Ella waited eagerly in her wheelchair, her face glowing with anticipation. At first, Toby only danced. The same wild, playful moves that had once broken the silence. But slowly, something changed. He began to tell stories between his dances, stories from the streets, from nights spent under bridges, from dreams that refused to die. Ella listened, her eyes wide with wonder. She laughed at his jokes, gasped at his near misses, and sometimes fell silent when he spoke of hunger and loneliness. Through his stories, she began to see the world beyond her walls, a world full of hardship but also full of heart. And through her laughter, Toby saw what kindness looked like, real, unguarded kindness that asked for nothing in return. Days turned into weeks. The mansion became alive again. The staff no longer whispered when they passed the hallway. Even Charles started coming home early, standing quietly by the window, watching the two young souls in the garden. Every evening, he'd see the same thing, his daughter laughing, her good arm waving in rhythm, her cheeks flushed with color. Then one afternoon, as Toby danced his favorite silly spin, something unexpected happened. Ella's left arm, the paralyzed one, twitched. "Just a small movement, barely there, but it happened," she gasped, staring at it as though her body had played a trick on her. Toby stopped dancing immediately. "What happened?" he asked, stepping closer. "My arm," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "It moved." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Toby grinned and raised his hands dramatically. "Then that means we dance harder." He began to move again, this time slower, softer, almost like he was guiding her spirit with each motion. Ella's laughter mixed with tears as she tried to lift her hand again, and it twitched once more. "This time stronger," she screamed, half in shock, half in joy. The maids came running. Charles, hearing the noise, rushed to the garden. When he saw her hand move, he fell to his knees. He didn't understand it, but he didn't need to. For the first time in years, he felt faith return, not faith in medicine, but in something purer. That evening, the dinner table was different. Charles insisted Toby sit with them. The boy hesitated, staring at the shining cutlery and sparkling glasses, but Charles smiled warmly. "You are welcome here, son." Toby ate quietly, every bite slow and careful, his eyes glistening with gratitude. He had never sat at such a table, never eaten food so rich, never been looked at with kindness by people who had everything. After the meal, he bowed deeply and said, "Thank you, sir." "Thank you, ma'am," though there was no ma'am left in that house. Ella laughed gently and said, "You can just say thank you, Toby." From that night, he became more than a visitor. He was family. The days continued like chapters from a forgotten fairy tale. Each time Toby came, Ella tried to move something new, a finger, a shoulder, a small lift of her arm. And each time she succeeded, he cheered like it was the greatest victory in the world. He never made her feel broken. He made her feel alive. One afternoon, rain began to fall again, light at first, then heavier, just like the first day they met. Toby looked up, grinning. "Should we dance again?" he asked. Ella hesitated. "It's raining." "Then let's let it wash the pain away," he said simply. He ran out into the downpour, spinning and laughing. Water splashed around him, his thin clothes clinging to his skin. Ella watched from her chair, torn between laughter and tears. Then, slowly, she wheeled herself forward, out of the shade, into the rain. The cold drops hit her face, her arms, her hair, and for the first time since the accident, she didn't feel fragile. She felt free. Toby danced around her, singing nonsense, his joy contagious. Ella lifted her left hand, trembling but steady, and joined him, moving to a rhythm only their hearts could hear. From the balcony, Charles watched in silence, his eyes filled with tears as he whispered, "Thank you, God!" That night, Ella slept peacefully, her face turned toward the window. Toby, back in his small shelter behind a broken shop, whispered the same words before closing his eyes. Thank you! neither of them knew that the laughter and healing they shared were only the beginning. Because when joy begins to grow in a place that once knew sorrow, the world always comes to see the light. And soon, the story of the billionaire's daughter and the boy who danced in the rain would spread far beyond those mansion walls, carrying hope to hearts that had forgotten how to feel. It began quietly, almost too quietly for the world to notice. One morning, when the golden light slipped through the mansion windows, Ella reached for her brush. Her right hand held it firmly, but then, without thinking, her left arm twitched again, and this time, it didn't stop. The brush rolled, her fingers stiff but alive. She froze, eyes wide. A tremor ran through her body, not fear step but wonder. But she didn't say anything, not yet. All day she waited, her heart racing. She wanted him to see it first. That evening, after Toby had finished his usual plate of rice and was getting ready to leave, she called softly from the garden, "Toby? Wait." He turned, his grin fading as he saw the tears in her eyes. Then she lifted her left arm, trembling, uncertain, and the brush she'd been holding slipped and fell to the ground. Her fingers moved, not perfectly, but enough. Toby's eyes widened. For a heartbeat, silence filled the air. Then he shouted, "You're doing it, Ella. You're really doing it." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "It's real," she whispered, laughing through her sobs. "It's really happening." That night, when Charles returned home, she showed him. Her left arm moved, not perfectly, not fully, but it moved. The billionaire who had signed million-dollar deals without blinking suddenly fell to his knees, weeping like a child. He gathered his daughter in his arms and held her close, whispering, "Thank you, Lord. Thank you." From that day, hope became the new rhythm of their lives. Toby still came every day, still danced, still ate before leaving. But now, their afternoons were filled not just with laughter, but with determination. Every spin, every rhythm became part of a miracle. When he danced, she tried to follow his rhythm, moving her left arm little by little, fighting against the stiffness that had kept it still for so long. Each passing day brought a small victory. At first, she could barely raise it an inch. The next week, her fingers could close slightly. By the third week, she could lift it high enough to clap along with Toby's beats. Each tiny progress filled the mansion with cheers. Weeks passed, and Ella began to feel life returning, warmth, tingling, strength. The arm that once hung useless at her side now moved with purpose. Every time she managed a new motion, she'd look at Toby, her eyes bright with joy. "Did you see that?" she'd say, laughing. "My arm is learning your dance." The boy would grin, spin around dramatically, and reply, "Then one day, it'll dance better than mine." The entire household felt the change. The maids clapped from the hallway whenever Ella managed to lift her brush without help. The gardener smiled each time her laughter echoed through the garden. Even the chef said the food tasted better because of the joy in the air. Charles ordered new flowers planted, lilies, his late wife's favorite. "So she can watch her daughter bloom," he said softly. Sometimes, when Ella practiced her stretches, Toby would sit nearby, humming silly tunes to keep her smiling. "You have to trick the pain," he'd say. "If it feels heavy, laugh harder." And she did. At night, after his meal of rice and stew, Toby would always whisper a quiet thank you before eating. No matter how many days passed, he never lost that gratitude. He remembered hunger too well. And now, he cherished every bite, every smile, every laugh that filled that mansion. Charles watched it all, the laughter, the recovery, the life slowly blooming back into his home. One evening, he called Toby into his study. The room was filled with trophies, awards, and portraits from a lifetime of success, but Charles's gaze was soft, humble. He said quietly, "Do you know what you've done for us, Toby?" The boy looked puzzled. "I just danced, sir." Charles smiled faintly. "No, son. You brought back what money couldn't. You gave us joy." That night, something changed. Charles no longer saw Toby as a guest or an intruder. He saw him as part of the family, the missing piece that had brought light back into their world. Each new day became a celebration of small miracles. Ella could now braid her own hair using both hands, and even though her left one still trembled sometimes. She could lift a cup, paint, and even play the piano again, slow, uneven notes at first, but music all the same. And when the rains came again, Toby ran into the garden, laughing as always. "Come on, Ella," he shouted. "Let's see if that arm can dance too." She hesitated, smiling through tears, then stepped out into the downpour. The rain was cold but freeing. She lifted her left arm high, shaky but strong, and spun clumsily beside him. They laughed and danced, water splashing around them, the world quiet except for their joy. Charles watched from the window, his heart full. For the first time since his wife's death, he whispered a prayer not of asking, but of thanks. Later that night, when Toby finished his meal and prepared to leave, Charles stopped him at the door. "Toby," he said softly, "you've brought back laughter, hope, and healing into this home. You've done what doctors couldn't. You've made us whole again." Toby looked down, embarrassed. "I just wanted to make her smile." Charles smiled. "And in doing that, you gave me back my daughter." Then, after a deep breath, Charles added, "You'll never go hungry again. From today, this is your home too." Toby froze. His lips trembled. My home?" "Yes, son," Charles said. "No more streets. No more hunger. You belong here with us." For a long moment, Toby said nothing. Then his eyes filled with tears and he whispered, "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much." Charles smiled gently. "No, Toby, thank you." That night, peace settled over the Benton mansion like a soft blanket. The laughter, the healing, the gratitude, it was all real, all alive. And though the world outside never knew what had happened behind those tall gates at inside, every heart understood one truth: that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can unlock the greatest miracles. Because one barefoot boy's dance had done the impossible, it had brought laughter where there was silence, hope where there was pain, and life back into an arm that once could not move. And as the moonlight touched the rain-wet garden, Ella lifted her left arm once more, smiling proudly at Toby. "See?" she whispered. "It's stronger today," Toby grinned. "Told you it was learning to dance." The first morning after Charles told Toby that the mansion was now his home, the boy didn't wake to the noise of traffic or the chill of the streets. He woke to birdsong and the smell of warm bread. For a while, he just lay there, staring at the ceiling, unable to believe the softness beneath him. The bed felt wrong in the best way. The blanket was heavy with comfort, the kind that makes you feel safe. He pressed his palms into it, smiling to himself. Then came a gentle knock. The door opened and a maid peeked in. "Good morning, Master Toby. Breakfast is ready." He blinked. Master," she laughed softly. "That's what the staff are to call you now." The words felt strange on his tongue. Master? Him? He used to beg for leftovers. Now people offered him meals before he even asked. He rose slowly, still unsure how to act, but one thing was certain: he would not let this new life change who he was. Downstairs, the dining room was a kingdom of sunlight. Ella sat by the window, already dressed, her hair tied in a soft bun. Her left arm rested gently on the table, no longer lifeless, but alive with small, steady motion. She turned her wrist, lifted her spoon, and smiled when she saw Toby. "Morning, champion," she said. Toby grinned. "Morning, doctor's favorite miracle?" She laughed, that clear, bright laugh that had once vanished from the house. "I used my left arm all through breakfast," she said proudly. "Look," he watched as she reached for a cup. Her hand trembled slightly, but she lifted it, steady and firm. "See? I'm getting stronger." Toby nodded, his smile soft. "Told you, it's learning to dance." Charles watched them from across the table, silent but smiling. The sight of them, his daughter full of joy and the boy who had restored it, was more valuable than anything in his vaults. After breakfast, Toby joined Ella in the garden for their daily therapy, as Charles called it. But to them, it was play. Toby would dance wildly, spinning on the grass, while Ella tried to follow the rhythm. Some days she waved her left arm in time to the beat. Other days she clapped or swayed. Each motion was a victory. Every sunset, before leaving the garden, Toby would place his palm over his heart and bow like a performer at the end of a grand show. Ella always laughed and clapped with both hands. But beyond the laughter, Toby was still learning what it meant to live inside comfort. He didn't know which fork to use for which meal. He sometimes forgot to sit while eating. He greeted every staff member with a thank you, which made them love him even more. One afternoon, as he helped Ella practice her stretches by the piano, Charles walked in holding an envelope. "Toby," he said, "I have something for you." He handed him the envelope. Inside was a letter and a set of books. "You'll start school next week," Charles said. "You'll have your own uniform, your own bag, everything." Toby froze. "School? Me?" Charles smiled. "You said once you dreamed of learning. I want that dream to live." The boy's lips trembled. "Thank you, sir. I don't even know what to say." Ella clapped, tears of joy in her eyes. "You'll be the best student there, Toby." He laughed shyly, looking down at the books like they were gold. That night, he kept the envelope under his pillow and couldn't sleep for hours, not because he missed the streets, but because, for the first time, he had a future. Days turned into weeks. Ella's recovery continued, her left arm now stronger, almost fully mobile. She could dress herself, braid her hair, even play the piano with both hands. The mansion was alive again. The staff, once quiet and distant, now sang while they worked. The gardener trimmed the roses with a smile. The chef hummed as he cooked. And every evening, laughter spilled from the garden, the laughter of two children who had rebuilt a broken home. But change, no matter how beautiful, always carries shadows. Charles had noticed something, a faint distance creeping between him and the outside world. Business associates grew curious about his new adopted son. Some whispered that the billionaire had gone soft. Others wanted interviews, stories, attention. Charles refused them all. He had learned what truly mattered, and it wasn't headlines. Still, late at night, he sometimes sat alone in his study, looking at the two of them laughing in the garden through the window. The thought of losing that peace scared him more than anything. One evening, as the sun melted into gold and orange across the sky, Ella and Toby sat by the fountain. The air smelled of wet grass and jasmine. "Do you ever think about your old life?" Ella asked softly. Toby was quiet for a while. "Sometimes. Not the hunger or the cold. Just the sky. I used to sleep under it. Out there, I thought no one could see me. But maybe God did." Ella smiled gently. "He did. And he sent you here." Toby chuckled, shaking his head. "Maybe he just wanted to teach me how to use a fork." They both laughed. But beneath that laughter was something unspoken, a bond deeper than words, built on gratitude, healing, and light. Later that night, Toby stood by his window, looking at the stars. For the first time, he wasn't wishing for anything. He already had everything he'd ever dreamed of: family, food, laughter, a home. But just as he was about to draw his curtains, he noticed something. A shadow by the gate. Someone standing still, watching. He squinted, unsure if it was real or just his imagination. But the figure didn't move. It lingered, silent, almost hidden by the trees. The next morning, when Toby mentioned it to Charles, the man brushed it off with a smile. "Probably a passerby, son? Don't worry." Yet that night, when the security lights flickered outside, the same shadow appeared again, this time closer. Toby stepped toward the window, his heart beating faster. The figure moved slowly, then disappeared into the darkness. He stood there for a long time, staring out, unsure what it meant. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet unease stirred, a whisper that their peace, as perfect as it was, might soon be tested. And though the mansion still glowed with laughter and light, the night wind carried something new, a question, a tension, a presence waiting just beyond the gates. For 3 nights in a row, the figure kept returning. Always silent, always near the gate. The guards checked, searched, and found nothing. No footprints, no sign of intrusion. But Toby could feel it. Something, or someone, was out there, watching. One misty evening, unable to shake the feeling, he stepped outside. The air smelled of rain, heavy and cold. The mansion lights glowed faintly behind him, the fountain's water whispering in the distance. And then he saw him, a man in a torn brown jacket, standing where the road met the gate. "Who are you?" Toby called softly. The man lifted his head. His face was rough, worn, and familiar. Too familiar. "Toby?" the man whispered. His voice trembled. "Is it really you?" Toby froze. His breath caught. That voice, it dragged him back to the nights he'd slept under bridges, to the stories told by firelight in the slums. He knew that face. "Papa?" The word slipped out before he could stop it. The man nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. "My boy, I've been looking for you." Toby stumbled forward, his heart pounding. The gate swung open as the guards watched in confusion. He stopped just inches away from the man, older, thinner, but unmistakably his father. "I thought you were dead," Toby whispered. His father shook his head, eyes wet. I lost everything. The house, the job, your mother, she fell sick. I left to find money. But when I came back, you were gone. I searched, Toby. I searched everywhere. The boy's eyes burned. Memories flooded back, nights of hunger, the sound of rain on cardboard, the echo of his father's laughter before the world broke apart. You left? Toby said quietly. You left me alone. I did, his father admitted, voice cracking. And I've carried that pain every day since. But when I heard about the billionaire's daughter, about a homeless boy who danced for her, I knew it had to be you. The mansion lights behind them flickered gently. Ella stood by the window watching. Charles joined her, both silent as they saw the two figures at the gate, a reunion wrapped in years of loss. Toby's hands trembled. He didn't know what to feel, anger, relief, or love. The man before him was both a wound and a memory. Finally, he stepped closer and hugged him. The man broke into tears, his arms clinging tightly around his son. For a long while, they said nothing. The rain began to fall, washing over them, carrying away years of hurt. Charles came out, holding an umbrella. He didn't interrupt. When Toby finally turned, eyes red, Charles simply said, "Bring him inside." That night, the mansion was quiet. Dinner was simple, warm, and filled with the sound of healing. Toby's father sat nervously at the table, humbled by the luxury around him. Ella smiled kindly, using both hands, to serve him a plate. Her left arm, once paralyzed, now moved with grace. Charles watched them, the billionaire, the homeless boy, the girl who had learned to smile again, and the father who had returned from the shadows. It felt divine, like life had found a way to stitch broken hearts back together. After dinner, as everyone prepared to sleep, Toby walked to Ella's room to say goodnight. She was sitting by the window, her hand tracing soft patterns on the glass. I saw the way you looked at him, she said quietly. Your father. Toby nodded. I don't know how to feel, Ella. Part of me is happy he's here, but another part still hurts. She smiled gently. That's how healing starts. You don't have to forget, Toby. You just have to forgive. He looked at her, eyes soft. You sound like my mother. Ella chuckled. Then she must have been kind. She was, he said, smiling faintly. You remind me of her too. She always believed in second chances. There was a brief silence. The moonlight painted the room silver, the night calm and still. Then Ella raised her left arm, flexing it playfully. Look at this, she said. No more trembling, Toby grinned. Told you it would dance again, she laughed. But there was something emotional in her eyes, something that said goodbye without words. Toby, she whispered after a moment. Thank you for finding me when I was lost, he blinked. You weren't lost. Yes, I was, she said softly. Not on the streets, but in here. She touched her heart. And you reminded me how to live again. He said nothing, only smiled. The silence that followed was full, not empty. The kind of silence that doesn't need words. Days passed. The house grew livelier than ever. Ella walked with full strength now, her laughter ringing through the halls. Toby's father began helping around the property, fixing things, sharing stories with the staff. And Toby, he danced every evening, just as before, though now his dances carried peace instead of pain. One Saturday morning, Charles called them all together. They stood in the garden, Ella, Toby, his father, and the staff who had come to love them. Charles cleared his throat, his eyes kind. Family isn't just about blood, he said. It's about those who hold your heart when life breaks it. And because of that, this house will always have a place for both of you. Toby's father bowed his head. Sir, I don't deserve your kindness. Charles smiled. None of us do. That's what makes it grace. The wind brushed softly through the trees. Birds sang. The fountain sparkled in the sun. And in that moment, the mansion, once a place of silence and sadness, became something new. A home reborn through love, forgiveness, and a boy who once had nothing but dreams. That evening, Toby sat by the same window where he had first spotted the shadow weeks ago. Ella joined him quietly, a book in her lap. Do you think everything happens for a reason? She asked. He thought for a long time, then smiled. Maybe not everything, but sometimes the worst things lead us to the best people. Ella nodded, resting her head lightly against his shoulder. Then I'm glad you snuck into our house that night. He chuckled softly. Me too. Outside, the sky was golden, the kind of gold that feels like a promise. The garden shimmered, and laughter drifted from downstairs. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Toby whispered, "Thank you, God, for second chances." Ella smiled. "And for dance lessons," she teased. They both laughed, their voices blending with the evening wind. From the balcony above, Charles watched them quietly, a small smile on his lips. The world had broken them all in different ways, but somehow, through kindness, forgiveness, and faith, they had found each other again. And down by the garden, where the first dance had once begun, the fountain light flickered gently, as if bowing to the story that had healed a house and everyone in it. Do well to hit the subscribe button to see more emotional and exciting stories like this on AfricanTales by Siri.